Welcome back. Egypt's EFG Hermes wants to enter Nigeria through an acquisition and expects to get regulatory approval to start a brokerage business in Kenya this year as part of a big push into frontier markets. And that's according to a senior executive from that company. The investment bank also plans to boost its research team to between 12 and 15 from 8 over the next 12 months as interest among institutional investors grows in smaller, fast-growing economies in the Middle East, Asia and Africa. EFG took a controlling stake in Karachi-based Invest and Finance Securities Limited last year, which now operates as EFG Hermes Pakistan Limited with a staff of 60 people. As well as Nigeria, Kenya and Pakistan, EFG is also eyeing expansion into Bangladesh and Vietnam. Once it gets the regulatory approval in Kenya, EFG hopes to have an office with 10 to 15 people to serve as a base for Tanzania, Rwanda and Uganda. And Sudan's annual rate of inflation rose to 35.52% in May from 34.81% in April as food and energy prices continued to rise following subsidy cuts implemented in November. Sudan's economy has deteriorated since the South ceded in 2011, taking with it 3/4 of the country's oil output, its main source of foreign currency and government income. With revenue drying up, the government announced cuts to fuel and electricity subsidies in early November that saw petrol prices rise by about 30%, which led to a broader inflation. A dollar shortage and a ballooning black market for hard currency have also made foreign-made goods more expensive in a heavily import-dependent country. And in South Africa, ratings agency Moody's has downgraded 5 of that country's largest banks and 4 insurers with a negative outlook after the country's credit rating was downgraded last week. The long-term local and foreign currency deposit ratings of Standard Bank, First Rand, Absa Bank, Nedbank and Investec Bank were downgraded to Baa3, 1 notch above non-investment grade. The ratings agency also downgraded Standard Bank's long-term local and foreign currency issuer ratings to Ba1 from Baa3. Moody's says the primary reason for the downgrade was weakening credit and macro profile of the South African government, exerting pressure on banks in what is said was a challenging operating environment characterized by a pronounced economic slowdown. Moody's also downgraded the debt ratings of South African insurance groups Old Mutual Life Assurance Company and MMI Group were lowered to Baa2 from Baa1, while God Risk and Standard Insurance dropped to Baa3 from Baa2. All were given a negative outlook. In the meantime, South African life insurer MMI Holdings says it will start offering loans and take deposits as part of a deal with lender African Bank as it looks to revive declining profits. MMI, the number 3 long-term insurer in South Africa, has seen profits drop for the past 2 years as weak growth and poor investment returns weighed on revenues. The insurer plans to use African Bank to build up a loan book in excess of 10 billion rand over the next 5 years and to share the profits equally with the bank. African Bank, a lender that grants loans not backed by assets, was rescued and recapitalized by South Africa's central bank after its parent African Bank Investments Limited collapsed in 2014. Still in South Africa, the unemployment rate there increased to 27.7% in the first quarter of 2017 from 26.5% in the previous period. It is the highest jobless rate since the first quarter of 2004. Now, the youth are the most affected by unemployment, which has caused protests in various parts of South Africa. Analysts have warned that the lack of urgency from government to deal with this catastrophe could fuel a violent uprising.
As South Africa slides into recession for the first time in 8 years, analysts warn that the country's growing unemployment, especially amongst the youth, is a ticking time bomb. According to figures published by Statistics South Africa 2 weeks ago, the unemployment rate increased to 27.7% in the first quarter of 2017, with youth unemployment at a staggering 38.6%, the highest unemployment rate recorded since 2003. The persistence of poverty and joblessness 23 years after the end of apartheid is also stoking anger, with unrest dubbed service delivery protest taking place frequently. 22-year-old Thandeka Ngwenya completed high school 4 years ago. Due to financial constraints, she was unable to pursue higher education, leaving her with no choice but to hunt for a job with no success.
I came here with a mentality of, I'm trying it out. Anything that works, I'm just going to go with it, just to get my foot in there. And I got here, we had an assessment that we had to do. It was quite interesting and very saddening having to see that it was a lot of us. I mean, a group of young people, and discouraging as well.
Youth employment agencies like Harambee are stepping in to try and bridge the gap.
Our young people in this country are very optimistic. So they see very bright futures for themselves, and that's actually really a very encouraging thing. But when they get here, because of that optimism, we have to kind of manage a lot of expectations. We have to say to them, we know that you want this, but there are specific spaces that you need to start.
Unemployment among blacks, by far the largest population group among South Africa's 55 million people, stands at over 30%, compared with just 7% for whites. The ANC party's Secretary General, Gwede Mantashe, says that young people cannot be picky when it comes to jobs during tough economic times.
Dirty, difficult, dangerous jobs are not appealing. Agriculture is not appealing to the extent it should. It's the only sector with mining that have done well. They're not the most attractive sectors for our young people. What we should be doing is to try to encourage our young people to get into a number of sectors and get the exposure and develop their interest.
The expanded definition of unemployment, which includes people who have stopped looking for work, also decreased to 35.6% in the fourth quarter from 36.3% in the previous quarter.
And finally, Zimbabwe has banned grain imports to protect local farmers after producing enough to meet domestic demand, just a year after a devastating drought left more than 4 million people in need of food aid. The Southern African nation's grain agency has also raised $200 million from the government and private sector to purchase maize from farmers. The National Treasury last week forecast output of the staple maize at 2.1 million tons this year, from 511,000 tons in 2016. The Grain Marketing Board would pay $390 per ton for white maize, almost triple the $143 for the September contract for white maize in South Africa, one of the countries from which Zimbabwe has previously imported maize. And that's it on the program. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Chimize Obi Iwago.